And good morning again. This is our entrepreneurship lecture on principles of management. So this is bonus material from the course. We managed to fill in all the syllabus items, and we still have a couple of sessions left. So for this first session, I wanted to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship. It's an interesting topic. I think many students are interested by it. Not only from the glamour perspective of these superstar entrepreneurs that tend to capture the imagination of us all, but also because this combines prior knowledge of many things we saw in the course. In fact, one of the most um, um, prevalent ways to look at entrepreneurs is as people that are able to do many different things, just good enough to keep the company going. It's what is called the jack of all trades theory. So what I want to talk about today is a little bit the way in which we look at entrepreneurship, the way in which we perceive entrepreneurs. I will not be teaching how to make an elevator pitch for your idea. But I will relate to stuff we saw, for example, in our strategy classes, in our marketing classes, in our finance classes, to see what are the important things entrepreneurs should be concerned about. Okay. Um, I'll start with perhaps a boring way to define an entrepreneur, but I think it's a good definition, that the one we have here. So it's a capacity. Many times we call it an ability rather, and willingness to develop and manage a business venture along with its many risks, and in order to make a profit. So I underlined here the word risk, because it is really the risk and uncertainty, I should add. It is really one of the most defining characteristics of entrepreneurship, is that we are bearing, with the entrepreneur, are bearing the risk of our venture. This is what keeps us up at night. This is what keeps us not taking holidays, if you want, in some cases for decades. This is the less glamorous part of entrepreneurship, not figuring out how you're going to pay your employees' wages by the end of the month. You have so many people that depend on you. You have bills to pay, inventory in your warehouses. Why do people put themselves through this, through all this stress, rather than just taking a job elsewhere, working for someone else? So there are many answers for this question of occupation. Why do people decide that their occupation, so entrepreneurship is an occupational choice. Why do people decide to become entrepreneurs rather than doing something else? And this is what I would like to start this discussion. So let's let's analyze here this opportunity costs argument. Okay, so it is commonly said, right, that because entrepreneurship is an occupational choice, as with any other occupational choice or with any other action, there is an opportunity cost associated. So this is one of the most, if I wanted you to remember only two things from this whole course, I would say that opportunity cost is something that is almost always, if not in our conscious selves, in our conscious minds, at least in the back of our heads. And the second one would be, well, the second one, I have to make a choice. I said only two. Okay, the second one would be that there are gains that exist simply from trading, so from exchange. So exchange in itself is something that generates surpluses because it's a more efficient allocation of goods to people. So I may have an excess of something and a deficit of something else. Some other person may have an excess of the stuff I need and a deficit of the something I have in excess myself. So the exchange in itself, without producing anything, can generate utility and can generate value from an economic standpoint. So, and if I can add a third thing, care about efficiency. But opportunity cost is tremendously important for occupational choice, and to explain the occupational choice of an entrepreneur. The simplest way to think about it, I would say, is to think about the case of necessity entrepreneurs. People that, because say they are unemployed, because they cannot find economic opportunities for them to work, they decide to become entrepreneurs. They need to do something and they decide to become entrepreneurs. This is the case in which the opportunity cost of this person is, if not zero, very close to zero. Okay, so this partially explains the occupational choice of entrepreneurs. Now, this, as you may also imagine, explains only a portion, and I can add a small portion of people that are entrepreneurs that start and run their own businesses. Most people that have started a business have had some work experience. I can tell you in Portugal, the first people start their first businesses around the ages of 39 to 42, and prior to that, they have had significant work experience. They have significant work experience. They many times are people that are more experienced, at least for the Portuguese reality. They are more experienced in the job market than, say, a typical university graduate, because most entrepreneurs in Portugal tend not to attend university. This already gives us some intuitions we have about entrepreneurship. When we discuss these superstar entrepreneurs I was mentioning before, those ones that tend to be the most charismatic, we will see a considerable chunk of them to have, say, drop out of college. Notable cases here, I would say Mark Zuckerberg, the founder and CEO of Facebook, is a good example of this. And if you see The Social Network, the film, it's an okay film, so I recommend it. You will see exactly why he dropped out of college. It was because his opportunity cost, so the cost of staying in school to finishing his degree, which is, as I'm very aware, you all know, it's a full-time job in itself, was just too high in comparison to postponing the losses he would have from postponing the starting of his business right away. So his idea could not wait, while his degree could wait until he was more comfortable in life or retired, or perhaps he wouldn't even need it in the first place. So we see again here this question of opportunity cost. So it's something that is extremely important in explaining the decision to become an entrepreneur or not. It is also very important to explain the reason for stop becoming an entrepreneur. So you may be running your business may be doing, if not great, fine, or even perhaps sometimes great, and you may still decide to let it go, to close your business, if possible, to sell your business and go work for someone else. This also occurs, and we tend to see this in many industries, but perhaps the best known industry for this is, say, in technology, in IT industries, where we have tech startups. They grow, they get acquired by one of these giants, and then the founders are now part of the board of this larger organization. Some will sell the company and start another one, what we tend to call serial entrepreneurs many times, or habitual entrepreneurs. But some will instead go and work for these larger companies. This is because larger companies tend to be able, on average, to pay higher salaries, tend to be more efficient, and in most industries, economies of scale matter. But this also explains, this opportunity cost also explains the decision to leave entrepreneurship. So it's a very, very important factor to explain both the entering and the exiting of the entrepreneurial occupation. So this is a way to look at and to explain the decision to become an entrepreneur. This is, as you can see, a solely economic explanation. We know, however, that other factors, namely psychological, but sometimes also sociological motivators, are extremely important for people to decide to start their own business. From psychological reasons, you'll hear entrepreneurs saying that I wanted to make something of myself, so I wanted to start something, I wanted to take this challenge, or I wanted the autonomy, or I didn't want to be constrained by what my CEO or my country manager told me to do. I wanted to have this flexibility. Um, I am so there are plenty of reasons. I wanted to feel the risk, the adrenaline of starting my own business. It was fun. So these are all reasons, psychological reasons that people give to start their businesses, and these reasons should be taken into account. For those of you considering starting your own business, one thing you should know is that startups tend to fail. They tend to fail. Um, in Portugal, they tend to fail and fail quickly, for example. In other countries, they tend to fail, but they last a little bit longer. I could say that in between 60 to 80% of startups fail in Portugal within the first 3 years. So at least they don't last. The bad news doesn't take that long to come. Um, this is due mostly in the Portuguese case to two explanations, which is lack of financing constraints. Um, it takes if you apply what we've learned in our investment analysis part of the course. It takes a significant amount of time to break even for companies that have fairly small capital investments. Um, and it is difficult to keep on financing the company, to find financing for the company to stay afloat in these initial periods. Um, the second reason why many companies in Portugal tend to fail relatively quickly is simply because of market size. It's a small country. If you start only in this country, you'll have a fairly small potential customer base. So if you go back to one of our first lectures and we looked at the potential size of the market that you could sell to your products to, even if your product was for free or service was for free, that value tends to be a fairly small one. So this problem with scale and with potential customers is also something that tends to hinder companies, startups in smaller countries that have smaller markets. But as I was saying, so even though most startups tend to fail, we see that those that persist, they tend to yield fairly small profits, and their founders, the entrepreneurs, tend to earn less on average than they would if they were working for someone else. So if you consider your opportunity cost alone, this opportunity cost alone, you see that when you are in entrepreneurship, if you consider only salaries, you are earning less than what you were earning as uh, um, not than what you were earning before, than what you would be earning if you kept on the same career path. In many cases, too, you are still going to earn less than what you were earning before. So this tells us that while economic theory is an important tool to assess an opportunity cost, is an important tool to assess occupational choice to become an entrepreneur, our common sense explanations here also play an important role. And by our common sense explanations, I'm using the psychological and sociological explanations of I want more autonomy, people in my family have often started their own business, it's part of our culture, etc. So bear in mind that these play an important role. And there must be some kind of utility, a value derived by a person to start their own business and be running their own business. Again, intuitively we know this, but the data also shows us that, also shows that because entrepreneurs earn less than their equivalent paid employee counterparts, they are more, they must be the reasons motivating them to keep on being entrepreneurs rather than closing the company and just returning to the paid labor market. Okay, so this is a little bit an explanation of the very big factor motivators to start a business. Um, what I want to address next is the 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 reasons why entrepreneurs or some people can become entrepreneurs and want to become entrepreneurs and can succeed when starting their own businesses. So if you want, this is the answer to the $1 million question of how do you make, can you, if you could engineer a successful entrepreneur in a lab, what would the ingredients include? And here there are three theories that help us explain or that help us design this perfect entrepreneur. These theories can be seen as complementary to each other. So one thing relates to this, to what we saw last class when we talked about risk preferences and to the ability to manage risk individually. So if you remember, what I said last class was that most individuals tend to be risk averse. Most companies, particularly large ones, tend to be risk neutral, and some weird individuals or organizations, but mostly individuals, will tend to be risk seeking. That is, will prefer a gamble with a lower expected value than the certainty equivalent that they can receive. Entrepreneurs tend to fall in the first category, tend to be individuals, people that assess investment opportunities like companies do. That is, they care not so much about the variance of their payoffs, but they are more interested in the expected value. So they tend to be closer, if not completely risk neutral. That's an interesting fact. And if you want, this is a very neat way to explain why companies start in the first place. So if there's 0 companies in the world, how does the first company get started? We can use this explanation, well, because people are different in their preferences towards risk. The first companies are going to be started by people that are risk neutral. And as they grow over time, these people are going to turn into companies, into large organizations, and these risk preferences that the individual had are now passed on to the company as a whole. So it would be a very neat way to explain company creation in terms of risk preferences. This is one explanation. So we know that entrepreneurs tend to be different from the overall or average population because they perceive risks in a different way. They are more concerned about expected value than about the variance. The second explanation is because, the second explanation perhaps is the one that is most often given by gurus, by charismatic entrepreneurs, is the ability to recognize opportunities. So the opportunity recognition ability. So this is the adage of where other people see problems, I see solutions. Where other people see crises, I see opportunities. So this is what that explanation of entrepreneurship tells us. And we do recognize this. We do recognize that some people, when looking at the same reality as others, are able to anticipate and to act upon opportunities that others either do not recognize or that others take a very long time to recognize and act upon. So this entrepreneurial ability to spot and act upon these opportunities is something that also distinguishes this group of people from the overall population. Um, as I said, this is perhaps the most commonly used explanation for entrepreneurship. So I went on a trip to a different part of the world. I saw a product that was extremely popular there, and I reckon I can bring this to my home country and start a business selling it. So, or I saw this application in a given industry, and I know exactly who will be needing this application for themselves. Okay, this type of reasoning is used by entrepreneurs. The third explanation or the third ingredient to make a perfect entrepreneur is perhaps the most paradoxical one. And because I'm running out of time on this lecture, I will do a little bit of suspense, make a short break for now, and start it again in about a minute's time. Okay? So I'll just stop, and we're back on. Um, I left the previous slide on a bit of a cliffhanger. Um, I said there were three major ingredients you want to create a successful entrepreneur. So a successful entrepreneur needs to have fairly risk neutral preferences, needs to have a superior ability to identify opportunities in an environment and to act upon the opportunities she identifies. And also, the third one is she needs to have a balanced set of skills. So this is what sometimes is called the jack of all trades theory. So this is a very interesting theory in the sense that it tells us something that can be a little bit paradoxical. What this theory tells us is that the the best um, restaurant owner, entrepreneur, so the best person who ever started a restaurant in the world, is not the best chef, is not the person that has the best ability to source new and exciting recipes. It's not the person that is best at scouting a location, a breathtaking location for a restaurant that just everyone wants to go to, the restaurant at the end of the universe. It's not even the person that is best at defining the most exquisite type of service you can provide to, and the best dining experience based on the deco and the music and just the I don't know, the materials used for the cloth linen on your table. It's not the best accountant, the person that is, or the best financial manager, the person that is best at making the decisions, the financial decisions on where to invest, how much to spend, when should we change the menu. Not the best person in segmentation, in catching trends. None of this is going to explain alone what is the best restaurateur in the world. Instead, it is the combination of all this. So the best restaurant entrepreneur in the world is going to be the person that is very good and not particularly bad at any of these skills. So, in other words, the success of an entrepreneur is determined not by what they do best, but what by they do worse. So, let's keep using this analogy of a restaurant owner that starts, so an entrepreneur that is a restaurant owner. This person can be a very good chef. This person can be a very good scout for locations. This person can be extremely good at, say, um, doing the deco and catching what's the trendy in terms of what foodies are into in this year. But if this person is a terrible human resource manager that doesn't know how to hire the best or sufficiently good employees, then perhaps these employees are going to be poorly motivated, they're going to start shirking, they won't show up on time, they will mess up the orders, they'll get up the changed mixed, um, they will make wrong or incomplete orders from the suppliers, and the restaurant is going to collapse. If anything else here fails, if the restaurant is terrific, the food is exquisite, the deco is great, but the cost structure just isn't there, you're making a loss for every meal you serve. So the success here of this entrepreneur, I saw a film the other day that had this character of an entrepreneur. I think it was called Quiet Life. It's a good film. Um, it was Italian, I think. That I recommend. It's so the success of this restaurant is going to be determined by what the person does worse. And if the person doesn't really do anything very bad, very poorly, then the restaurant may survive. if you think about it, this is many times what is attributed in terms of entrepreneurs that fail. They say, yeah, the idea was great, but the execution was poor. So this entrepreneur had an extremely innovative idea, but then couldn't bring it to market. The product turned out to be too expensive, too buggy. It arrived 2 years too late. So if you ever funded, what's the name, an Indiegogo or a Kickstarter campaign, um, hopefully this didn't happen to you, but sometimes we observe products that have a lot of potential, but then go through development hell. They are lost in the details. They cannot get the supplies right from their or the materials right from their suppliers. They cannot scale up the production. They may have extremely good capabilities in, say, product design or in assessing the needs in the market, but then they fail in these executions. Sometimes you'll hear excuses like, yes, but well, the idea was simply too much ahead of its time. This is a demonstration of the weakest link of these entrepreneurs. So perhaps it wasn't really ahead of its time, but perhaps it was the market, the demand wasn't there. The opportunity from a production perspective or design perspective was there, but the demand side wasn't there. Okay, so this is an interesting view because it contrasts a little bit with our view of an entrepreneur that is a technical genius. A technical genius that's doing something. So I would say that's the best software developer in the world will likely be an extremely good entrepreneur because whatever this person does is just pure gold. Well, if it's the person is unable to market, if the person is unable to gather a team around him, the business is likely going to fail. Does this mean that this type of individualistic geniuses can never start a company? Not necessarily. This is what I would call the interesting part. This is the part in which entrepreneurial teams become important. We know of some notable cases. So in entrepreneurship, I think we are prone to think about at least these examples of these entrepreneurial superstars. But the way that, for example, Apple got started with Steve Jobs and Wozniak is a good example of this. Wozniak was recognized for being a hardware genius, so a computing hardware genius, also an extremely competent programmer. His hardware design is up until today lauded from being some of the most elegant ever conceived. He was a person that had the mind of an academic in many ways, so he created his own solutions for the technical challenges rather than simply using off-the-shelf components that kind of did what he wanted. He was obsessed with creating his own solutions that worked exactly the way he wanted, but he lacked the marketing ability. He lacked the external product industrial design capabilities. While he was terrific at architectural design for hardware, he was not so good at designing the externals, the industrial design of the machines he created. And he was not while he was very good also at coding, he was not extremely good at making, say, graphic user interfaces as Steve Jobs was. So this partnership complemented the limitations of each of the two individuals, and it was the way out for these two specialists into entrepreneurship. So this is a little bit the solution for this jack of all trades problem. Okay. I'm not able to see the chat. It's a little bit annoying. I don't know what happened here. I'll just stop the recording here and perhaps have a discussion on the chat because I simply cannot see it. Okay, so see you later here.